Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being your show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Interview with the Vampire. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode. This whole domestic situation is too real, and it kind of makes you feel gross seeing it, because Daniel doing it in the most dickish way possible, obviously points out what it is. It's kind of a it is a Stockholm Syndrome situation. Even him saying somewhat effed up, jokingly, somewhat of like, oh, officer, he did it once, he didn't mean it. So it's like, yeah. Because Louis' damage was extensive. He was blind in one eye, punctured, lungs, and he was badly hurt, and it wasn't just. And then, once again, I'm always curious about the healing factor. Once again, some stuff leans into vampires, like the healing factor is quick. Other things have kind of made a point of no, it takes a while to heal. Like you take this and let the right one in. It's kind of indicated like vampirism healing isn't as fast, so it took a while. I think it took months for Louis to heal from all the extensive damage. They actually talk about it a little bit too, that Lestat's ability, the cloud gift. It's not flying like Superman, because Superman's fiction, but it's more like floating, And so apparently it's a gift very few have, and even Lou was like, no, I don't have it. But it's so interesting because you're never fully sure what vampires in this universe are capable of. But I feel like that might be a super classic vampire ability. The whole not necessarily, somewhat flying, because I feel like not many modern day vampires have that ability. It's the super speed is one thing, but legitimately flying, I don't think there's any modern vampire stories that kind of take that approach, because I think that is a very maybe not classic, but I feel like that might be an older vampire ability. I feel like it's kind of waned from more popularized use in that regard. Either way, Lestat basically left, and the moment Louis was yeah, eventually he would admit that it was his great shame about everything. So I'm like, oh, so you do eventually take him back, or at the very least you had talked to him for you to have that perspective on him feeling bad about the whole thing. What also ended up happening is he would try and parade these gifts to not only Louis, but also Claudia, trying to win them back. Claudia is more of a, I have to win you back, because if I don't win you back, I don't win Louis back, because you're kind of a package deal. Even if I'm able to win Louis back, if I'm not able to kind of persuade you to be on my side either, this whole thing doesn't work. So he needs to win both of them back. There's no real love between him and Claudia. It's just she's a means to an end to getting to Louis. He knows the only way to ease his way into Louis' heart is to ease back into Claudia's good graces, or at least appear to slide back into her good graces. So it was years of exchanging gifts and stuff, but even then Louis admitted that slowly but surely it started chipping away at his armor that he had presented. I also love that little conversation between Louis and Claudia, where she was basically thinking that Emily Dickinson was a vampire. It's no, she's not a vampire. How you know? Because she's dead. It's yeah, there might be a tombstone and a grave, but we don't know what's in it. It's because of the way she, I guess some of her stories and her poems had the whole, I guess, there was, coffins mentioned or referenced in some of her stories. Because Emily Dickinson, to my knowledge, I've not, dabbled in the literary, stuff since, high school, but I think I was kind of yeah, she was kind of like Edgar Allan Poe in that regard. She did a lot of dark stories, if I remember correctly, a lot about death. So I could see, the parallels. A vampire probably could latch on to some of those stuff, but also just, probably, conversations about death, and probably, I'd have to look those poems up specifically to see if there's any, elements within those, things. I don't know, they might have been stories, they might not necessarily have been poetry, because I think she wrote stories along with poems and stuff, but, yeah, I don't know, I thought that was kind of a neat little conversation between both of them. But eventually, Lestat actually broke through to Louis by sending him a song that he recorded. There was only what was it, like the re-recording is all Louis has. He's like, yeah, the master's been destroyed, like there are no other copies of it, so all he had was like a poor, like a re-recording of it. But it's like, yeah, the song also, like the moment a woman's singing on, I was like, isn't that Antoinette? I was like, that's weird. And that's what the point was. It was to get a rise out of Louis. He literally like swam across to where they were, just because it's like, right, you want me to take you back, but what do? You put your lover on the song? Like, how does that make any sense? So they do their thing. So now it is trying to balance this whole situation out, like the bad blood between Lestat and Claudia, it doesn't disappear. They obviously set up rules. We learn a little bit about Lestat. Once again, unreliable narrator, because it's easy to tell your own story without real cooperation. Because he mentions his maker being a guy named Magnus. Magnus snatched him from his room, locked him up in a place where, like, he saw so many people that looked like him, his same build and complexion. It's like, looking into your own dead eyes, into your own eyes that look like yours on a whole bunch of dead bodies. So I guess it's like, right, Magnus had his very, like, serial killer thing, fed on Lestat for a long time until finally turning him and then apparently burning himself without telling. So Lestat says, like, basically everything he knows about vampirism and stuff like that is just stuff that he knows. It's stuff that he kind of made up for himself. But obviously Claudia doesn't believe that. Also, the whole lie about, like, yeah, it's not you can't learn to fly. It's either a gift you have, the cloud gift. You either have it or you don't. There is no learning it. But once again, it's like, you can't believe anything out of that guy's mouth. He is the literal incarnation of, I mean, he's kind of, the typical, like, thing about devil, the prince of lies and stuff like that. It's like, that is Lestat to a T, because he made this whole grand gesture of, like, right, I'm gonna kill, because they were like, they ground rules, no more lies, no more secrets. Also that he would kill Antoinette was, like, number one. But also, like, the whole Louis looking down upon them, he was like, no, I don't. But even Claudia was like, yeah, there is this kind of air of, like, you kind of tolerate the fact that we hunt humans. So he made more of a point of, I guess, going forward, he did say that, he did say, like, what was it, like 2000 something? Was it 2001 or 2002 or something was, like, the last time he killed a person? So he just drinks from people. I guess he found a more stable system of just doing that without having to kill people like he did over the years or something. But I think the whole point was, like, right, we go back to hunting and stuff like that. So like I said, any attempts for Lestat to kind of bridge a gap between him and Claudia, it's met with resistance, understandably so. Like, because Louis trapped in this thing of, he sees Lestat for who he is, but there's almost, as he even says it later on, he almost kind of dissociates himself, like, from it, of just, yeah, it's like he's having a conversation with Claudia, and he's like, him and Lestat are having sex, so you're like, there is a lot in that. It's just like, right, you're kind of going the flow and the motions of it, because even when they find out that actually Antoinette isn't dead, he amputated the finger just to, because she knows what he is, but she's like, yeah, I want to go to, Chicago, and, was it Chicago? It was somewhere she wanted to go to kind of, like, build or maybe even New York to build her career, but he's like, New Orleans is kind of the only home I have, like, because he doesn't want to stray too far from Louis, but he's like, yeah, like, I come here to get away from the complaints, so. At first, I was wondering if she's going to want him to make her a vampire, which that conversation apparently came up with Daniel, like, years ago when they did their original interview, was it's like, right, you at the time, like, I wouldn't have given you that gift. He's like, me now, I would have the ability to see your children grow old and get married and, living long enough to see all that, you to survive all this, but I think for him, it's just like, nah, it's kind of not for me. Like, maybe as an old man, you kind of have the wisdom to be like, yeah, that's not for me. And the perpetulance of, like, a 20-something-year-old being like, hell yeah, jumping at that opportunity. Different time, it was a different time, and you're a very different person at that time. I mean, especially if he's in his early 20s, when the whole thing, like, right, your brain doesn't fully develop until you're, like, 25 or something like that. So, I don't know. Either way, circling back, Louis and Claudia found out about it, but even Louis is like, yeah, he's not trying to 100% hide it. He knew we'd discover it, and that's kind of like the whole point, because he could have done a better job of hiding it if he really, really wanted it to. And I don't know, there is this self-hate thing that Louis kind of got going on, almost thinking that, I believe he thinks like this is kind of what he deserves. This is all he deserves. It's like, you deserve so much more. You deserve better. But even he said it to Daniel, even though Daniel was kind of dismissive of it. It's like, this isn't just your typical, like, domestic abuse situation. What's the word again? Stockholm syndrome type of thing. It goes even deeper than that, because the bond between Maker and Sire and Siree, I should say, that's a bond that is unlike any other. It runs deeper than anything else. It's like, once again, lover, murderer, maker. That all spun into one person, and I was like, how do you actually go about being okay with that? I mean, it was like for 20 years, you just kind but it's like, I think once again, the honeymoon phase was there, but now you're moving past the honeymoon phase, and now it's gotten to the scary part of like what he could do to you, that he could hurt you like that. And he spent all this time, like 6 years, like trying to make it up to you, but it's like, and you forgive him, but it's not a good relationship. It's not a healthy relationship. It's a toxic and disgusting relationship that I think both of them are trying to, like, the Stott's definitely trying to fill some void, because he even admits, like, the reason why he acted that way is because he has deep-seated abandonment issues, and he took it out on Louis because he was like, you're abandoning me for her, It's like, when he wants someone to choose him and only him and no one else, so. And Claudia kept telling Louis kind of basically, let's run away. We don't need him. We can go. We can go. We can go. But Louis wouldn't go. But he tells her to go. It's like, no, live your life. Me, I would just hold you back. He's like, I'm not very good I can't literally speak a lot of good, like, English or French. So, like, you go. Because truth be told, as he was thinking about walking into the sun, he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about what people would find, the ashes and my cane. But he didn't want to do what his brother Paul did. He's like, right, Paul forever ruined our sister Grace's wedding because he chose that. Not, I mean, Paul had a lot of stuff, so it wasn't probably like 100% on him. It was just, that day will always be associated with the day their brother committed suicide. So it's like, he didn't want to do that for Claudia and her day, like her new journey, like her going off on her own. Because even Louis is like, you don't need me anymore. You're smarter. You've grown. Because at this point, she's like 30. Yeah, she's like well past, like, she's in her early-ish 30s at this point in time. So it's like, right, you are grown. I didn't talk about it. Well, for one, I did like that. Speaking of the Paul thing, I do like that Louis asked a question that even I had thought. It's like, right, that just happens to happen at the same time that Lestat is coming after you, and he wants to make you into, like, he's been, courting you, essentially. So I'm like, I found that interesting. And he says, no, once again, it's not like Louis can get inside of his head. So there's no telling, like, if he's telling the truth in that regard. All you can do is, it'd be like, you can either just accept it or not. You can never really know for him, because he is someone who has lied so much and kept so much secret, So, the other element is that Claudia changed their dynamic. It was no longer like, for one, you were never my daddy, but you're not going to be Uncle Lou. It's like, we are now, I'm your sister, and after that, like, you can accept that or you can get out. And to at least my perspective and how I view that, it's because she sees, like, if you see me as kind of like your niece that you kind of like had to make for Louis' sake, you'll never see me as an equal. I want you to see me for who I am. So by being your sister, I want us to be on equal ground. I don't want to be seen as like the little perpetual child. Because even later on, Louis calls her sister instead of his daughter. Like, so that's why I'm like, and I think she does drop the whole Daddy Louis thing, because I think it's for both Louis and Lestat. It's like, we are a family, but I'm not playing this daughter role. I'm grown now, and the fact is, I'm going to be a sister. We are all going to be on equal footing. No more like Uncle Lestat or Daddy Louis. I think that's kind of. I think it's supposed to be like, we are supposed to be like, I am your sister, so in some regard. Like, that's the footing. I'm an adult now. I'm going to stand on equal footing with you, and I don't want you to see me as a child anymore. That's how I interpret it. I don't know if that was that, I don't know if that was me reading too much into it or maybe I'm misinterpreting that, but that's how I interpreted that. But given her opportunity, Claudia takes it, and I thought that was such an interesting thing from Louis, where it's like, right, obviously, Claudia could ride first class, or still, she should be able to, but obviously she can't. First, and like to be able to look out the window and see like the views and stuff like that. Obviously, she can't, because the only as Louis puts it, the only Negro that's able to be there is the porter, and then so everyone else has to ride in the back, and a Negro vampire has to take what's left. But Claudia was happy about that, but Lestat wouldn't let her go. That was twisted. Him ripping off the guy's head and then playing with it, and even doing an accent. Be like, oh, you're trying to get away, but it's like, oh no, like, the fact of the matter is, you and I, we endure everything between us, so we are going to endure for Louis' happiness, because Lestat knows if Claudia isn't around, Louis will leave again, and it's like Louis in a bad place, and he's like, yeah, probably even worse than when you initially left and abandoned him, so we are going to play this happy household. I will never let you go. Because he knows about Bruce. It's like, I might not be able to read your thoughts because I'm your maker, but he's able, if I push myself hard enough, I can hear the thoughts of other vampires. And Bruce is out there thinking about her. He's like, yeah, now do worse than break your leg. And, he confirms that, like, Bruce did rape her. And it's like, I would do worse than that. I will basically kill you, essentially, or something like that. He said it in a different way, but it was like, basically, I'll kill you. So it's like, right, she can't, like, this could have been her opportunity to run. It's like, but she's like, Louis gave me his blessing. It's like, no, you're going to stay here because I need you, because we're going to endure each other for Louis' sake, because we want to make Louis happy. And it's my way of, by keeping you here, keeping this family together, no matter what it's doing to Louis, at the very least, Louis won't leave me. It's a guarantee if you're here. So kind of forcing her hand. And in that moment, she ends up returning. Her hands were forced, but she's having this chess game with Lestat. And I even love that chess match they had earlier on, where she was like, oh, Massa, taught me this, or Massa, like, putting Lestat in the point of view of what he should be viewed as. And so he's playing the game with her, and she is talking to Louis, where she's like, right, I've been thinking about things for a couple of days now, and I think the fact is, looking back on it, I think he actually killed his maker. I think the fact is that kind of almost like we should be wary of him, because he could end up doing it to us too. Because it's like, right, I think it's like he was a slave and he didn't like that shit, so he ended up killing his master before he can learn the ins and outs. But it's like, now he's enslaved us, and Louis like, right, we're kind of stuck here, but we're not slaves. It's like, no, we are. And I guess that is that perpetual trauma of like, right, you do unto others what was done to you. So if he was treated like a slave, he's, in his mind, this is love, and maybe this is the only love he's known. Because he's talked about, Nicholas and everything, about how that went. Because because that was one of the buttons as what was it? As he was talking to, Lestat was talking to Antoinette, he described, like, the fact is that Claudia would do a whole bunch of sniping at him and stuff like that. And so this was just her snipes at him, were like, oh, made this beautiful song for Nicholas. Does that mean you love Nicholas more than you did Louis? But in her mind, it's like, right, if he can do it, so can I. She's like, we should kill him. And he's like, no, don't do that. He'll destroy you. And she's like, no, he won't. And the fact is, because I want to share a big, big secret between both of us, Louis. And she's like, you want to kill him just as much as I do, and it's going to make you feel good. And so she plays the game, and she gets to the point where she has him in check. She could easily get checkmate, but she stops the game, and Lestat's like, no, finish the game, finish the move. She's like, good night, Lestat, good night, Louis, and bounces, and he flies into a rage again. Just the point of, yes, like he wants to play his games, I can play them too. Because she's like, yeah, she's like, if you want to beat a monster like Lestat, you have to think like Lestat. And in fact, you have to think 5 moves ahead. And so it's like, right, from this point forward, they're plotting to kill Lestat. And at the same time, Daniel ends up kind of like, passing out from the medication that he's taken, from the medicine that they were giving him for his illness. And so during his dream, he's thinking about the first time he met Louis in a bar, but then he also remembers Rashid was there. So either that's his dream, like, because he's got Rashid on the mind and the dream is manifesting like that, or it's supposed to represent the fact that Rashid is a vampire. So you're like, interesting. Could it be that, because there was that whole conversation of like, oh, would you take the gift or something like that, Rashid? And then Rashid kind of danced around the subject and was like, oh, because he already did. Either like Louis made him all those years ago or he didn't. I don't know. Because it begs the question, because Louis, like, we don't know if Louis made anyone, but also it makes you go, are they purposely hiding that? Is Rashid actually a vampire? And is he wearing contacts or something to hide his eyes or something like that? So, because Daniel has been taking notes, trying to figure out more about the people around Louis when it comes to his staff, even the doctor. He's like, wait, you know that he's a vampire? The guy's like, I'm not here. And he's like, yeah, you're going to put him off the record because he's not supposed to be here. Stuff like that. He's like, it was a pleasure not meeting you, Mr. Mallory, or something like that when he was talking to Daniel. So, some interesting developments on that front, if that is okay. I mean, that's only like I said, that's not just his mind playing tricks on him, like conflating like reality with like this dream he had about putting Rashid in that memory, or it's just like it's been so long, but now he's like, wait, I did know that guy. Maybe he only met Rashid the once, but it's like, okay, so you are a vampire. Maybe you're just hiding it, because like, right, the only capacity he's ever seen Rashid obviously is in the capacity of, well, you're his servant, so obviously you're going to be here for Louis, like on hand all the time. It's like, oh, so once again, whether that's a sire bond that they have, or whether it's just another vampire they met along the way, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. It's interesting too, because obviously everything in the past, we also have like the backdrop of World War II happening. So like Poland had already gotten invaded and stuff, because it's like 1939 at that point in time. So it's like the beginning, like it's already going. I'm curious if it's going to continue to be this backdrop in the background for the next episodes or whatever. But it's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good